Hello, early childhood friends. We are now into Rubric 7 and Prompt 3. So your evidence to give the score in order for them to shift you from a 3 in Rubric 7 is your response to Prompt 3. So you'll be looking for places in your video where you have evidence that will address the two key parts of this question. So first, you need to have evidence of how you are engaging children in language and literacy development, as well as active and multimodal learning. You may have a clip that shows you doing both of these things at the same time. That's wonderful, that's great. You can use that clip to provide evidence for both. In your description, where you're talking about the clip and providing context, you'll just want to say the ways in which it provides evidence of you engaging children in both of these different ways. In your Understanding Rubric Progressions document, the example that they give is children are taking turns using an interactive whiteboard. Those children waiting for a turn have papers to write on to record their own answers. The candidate explains that a deliberate effort was made to ensure that all children were engaged. So you have language and literacy development happening through these multi-modalities, all right? So this is the first part, and this is the primary criteria for this particular rubric. So if you provide sufficient evidence here, you can score a 3. If you want to ensure a 3 and move onward to a 4 or 5, that's where we move down to the second part of the prompt. How did your instruction link new learning, so new learning, you're thinking about your central focus, with children's development, prior learning, and personal, cultural, and community assets. Now, these elements should be somewhat familiar to you from your responses in Task 1. So even though you've worked through Task 1, it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to forget about what you did there. If you've talked about what your students' prior learning was, if you've talked about your ideas regarding their development, if you've discussed their assets in Task 1, then think about, okay, what did you do in Task 2 in your actual instruction to engage with these areas? And ideally, you'll have evidence of that engagement in the video clips that you chose for Task 2. So thinking through what you've identified as your students' personal, cultural, and community assets, what you've identified as their prior learning, what you've identified as where they're at developmentally, and then what did you do in your actual instruction, the evidence from your videos, that shows how you connected new learning with these areas. And so it's really important that in addressing this part of the prompt, you're giving evidence and then you're making a really clear connection between this is the new learning that I was working with my students on, and this is what I was drawing upon in terms of their prior learning or their assets or my understanding of their development. I have the utmost confidence that you will be able to make those connections and find that evidence in your video. Namaste.